Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Garg. Really highlights one of the things about collaboration, and I'll be talking to a number of the panelists about that. And I've been so impressed this week at how much people are really coming together for the community. You know, this is a much bigger summit than we've had previously. Many more people really opening it up to everyone. But if I can just ask you one thing on because the working group that you're doing, I think, is excellent. It's going to be really important. What do you see as the biggest challenge around that? What do you think, you know, your vast experience that you've got of coming together, do you think there's any particular challenges in coordinating that international effort?
Of course, there would be a number of challenges, but I think, as I mentioned, that one doesn't need to really control every layer of the resources that is there. And while foundational resources, the foundational computer resources sharing would be a major challenge, but I think a bigger challenge might be to manage the interdependence of the AI ecosystem because it spans hardware, software, and the protocol, so to say, or the ethics around that. So I think one of the biggest challenges would be the governance around this sharing mechanisms, sharing protocols, and managing the framework. And the other would be what would be the talent and the institutional capability, which is in a way required. While, say, infrastructure can be acquired, but expertise would has to be developed. And I think that's critical to ensure that if you want to democratize and ensure that Global South is integral to that, and that's where it would be. And I think we don't need to focus so much on whether each country is owning each layer of the AI, but what is the capability and confidence in the systems that manage that we have the required methods to ensure that it takes care of the priorities and the values that each country wants to push forward.
Thank you so much, and I agree with you. It's a big challenge, but I'm glad that you're there to take that forward. This week, you may have seen the photograph of Modi here with many of the leaders in tech, and it's a great pleasure that one of the large organizations in the private sector, Microsoft, has got representation here. So I come to you, Natasha. So Natasha Crampton is Microsoft's first Chief Responsible AI Officer and leads the Office of Responsible AI. And it was interesting how long that's been going, I heard earlier this week. But she's putting Microsoft's AI principles into practice by defining, enabling, and governing the company's approach to responsible AI. The office also collaborates with internal and external stakeholders to shape new laws, norms, and standards to help ensure that the promise of AI technologies is realized for the benefit of all. As I said, that's what's been a key theme. So I saw Brad speak yesterday. It was a fantastic speech, and that was based upon a recent blog post that you and Brad put out just a couple of days ago. So can you tell us a little bit about that for some people who haven't had the chance to absorb in this session, please?
Sure. Thank you, Gustin, and it's
Yep.
Is that working? And thank you, Gustin, and it's a pleasure to be here with the panel and the audience today. So I think our announcement earlier in the week was about how Microsoft is contributing to bringing AI to the global south. And the headline that you might have seen is that we're on pace to spend $50 billion in order to do that by the end of the decade. What we're seeing from the diffusion data that we have access to and that we've publicly published already is that there is an urgent need to focus on the diffusion and what it's going to take to do that broadly and beneficially of AI to the global south, because we're already seeing that diffusion in the global north is roughly double what we see in the global south. And so for Microsoft, as a private sector player here, we think we have a role to play in helping to close that gap. And we see it as being centered on 5 different components. First, as Dr. Garb mentioned initially, we need to help build out the infrastructure that is needed for broad AI diffusion. So this is both investments in data centers to power AI applications, but it's also investments in connectivity as well. There are real electricity needs that need to be met. We're trying to do that with an eye towards the sovereignty of countries around the world. We realize that the world is a fragmented place, and so we design our data centers and also the services that run on top of them with a recognition that there needs to be real agency for the countries hosting those data centers. And so we have a range of different controls that we put in to our data centers, which include sovereignty controls in public clouds. Sometimes we build private clouds, but most importantly, it's all built on a foundation of collaborating with our government partners around the world. The scale of the infrastructure investment that's needed is just so great. It's really hard to see how we'll achieve what we need to without significant private sector investment, as well as funding from a range of different sources as well, governments, venture capitalists, and others. So the first limb is all about infrastructure. The second limb is all about skilling. What we've learned from the history of diffusion of other general purpose technologies, like electricity, for example, is that the countries that succeed in these really transformative economic moments are not actually the countries that necessarily invent the new general purpose technology. They're the countries that diffuse and adopt that technology fastest. And if you look back at history, skilling turns out to be one of the major unlocks to that adoption and broad diffusion. So we've made a range of skilling announcements. One that I'm particularly energized by myself is a very specific one focused on educating educators to help them with an AI-driven educational future. And of course, when you teach teachers, you're teaching students, and therefore the workforce of the future as well. So we committed to teach AI-specific skills to 2 million Indian teachers in partnership, of course, with Indian national standards and training institutions, which is an exciting thing to me to support the future. Third, the third limb is all about investments in multilingual and multicultural AI. You know, AI is no good to you if it does not work in the language that you speak and the culture in which you use the system. So we've been pleased to collaborate with Peter Matson from ML Commons on an expansion to represent Hindi, Tamil, Malay, Japanese, Korean, of some safety benchmarks that ML Commons has played a key role in standing up. But we're working upstream of testing and evaluation as well. So we're pleased to announce a Lingua Africa initiative where we are working with local communities in partnership with the Gates Foundation and others to really make sure that we're collecting lots of that really rich local data with and for communities. All of that data is not well represented on the internet, and spoken languages in particular require that careful collection. Fourth, is all about supporting local innovation. I think it's critically important that as the private sector we really deeply understand that AI will only be meaningful in people's lives if it's actually solving the local problems that matter to them. So we announced some initiatives here in India and further afield that are designed to really support that local innovation. Last, we announced also as part of the new Delhi Frontier AI commitments that several leading Indian AI companies and frontier AI companies from around the world signed on to yesterday, that we're going to be contributing our data as to what we can see about adoption and usage of AI in the economy into some central projects, including one led by the World Bank, so that policymakers are in a good position to understand how is AI being adopted in the economy. Where are the places where it's going faster than expected? Where are the places where it's going slower? Because I think that kind of data is incredibly useful for policy making, because it allows you to spot those places where you might need a skilling intervention or an infrastructure intervention.
That was fantastic. And if you ever want to know about really believing in something, having such a complex blog and then just reeling off the 5 pillars in that, and that really just shows that commitment, I think, that we're seeing from Microsoft taking that leading role. And actually, collaboration has been, since Brad's presidency, really has been one of the things that he really encouraged about, saying, look, we've got to work together.
Absolutely. I mean, not one of those 5 limbs is possible without deep partnership. And that coordination of those partnerships and deeply investing in them over time is really what's going to give us the outsized impact here.
And if we think about this, because Microsoft is a global corporation, yeah, you've got lots of countries, each with, just as Dr. Garg said, they've got their own customizations that they think. They've got their own local laws and regulations, and some things, there's something called the Brussels effect around GDPR, for example, which went pretty global, but it's not the case for AI, for example. How do you think you manage that challenge of trying to make sure that it's broad enough, but focuses for the individual needs of nations? Have you come across that challenge?
Yes, that is part of what I work on day in, day out at Microsoft, because part of my role is working very closely with our product teams to make sure that we are building our products, our models, in a way that's trusted and trustworthy by design. And so we are building products and technologies that we aim to share with the world. And it is absolutely true that not every part of the world has the same rules or expectations. And part of what we need to do is to make sure that we're building technology in a way that has enough sort of controls and choices that people can make downstream of what we choose to do at Microsoft to apply that technology in their own context. So we ourselves do have a point of view about how we want our technology to show up in the world. So, we do think carefully about if we're making available a service that's got some configurable controls, we do think carefully about what we think the default should be, but we also really do recognize the need for that agency, and and we do deeply understand that not every part of the world is homogenous. I think it's, here in India, it's just a beautiful place to recognize the sort of linguistic and cultural diversity of the world. Quite honestly, if we don't build technology that can be easily adapted and applied in people's local contexts with their values, with their laws, we're just missing the opportunity to, have our technology reach the world. So there are complex challenges. Sometimes there are direct conflicts between what one jurisdiction wants and what another jurisdiction is sort of declared as a matter of law. They can be worked through, and this is partly why you also need a great partner ecosystem, right? Being able to make available models open source or on an open weight basis, which Microsoft has long done, for example, with our 5 family of models. This is another way of empowering the ecosystem to adapt and build based on that.
Thank you so much. And you just touched on, you mentioned ML Commons, and you touched about culturally sensitive, and it's interesting. There is a report that's been released by ML Commons this week on robust and defensible benchmarks, and part of that was some great work from the Singaporean agency IMDA, which the response from an AI it has to be culturally sensitive, and that's the point that you made. I think culture is important because what is seen as acceptable in one culture may not be in another. So that brings me nicely to Dr. Peter Matson, who's the president of ML Commons and also a senior staff engineer at Google. So he founded ML Commons himself and was previously the head of the Programming Systems and Applications Group at NVIDIA. So on that ML Commons, I think it's done some great work, as we've heard. It's played a major role in benchmarking performance and efficiency of AI. How do you see that open benchmarks can contribute to building sovereign capabilities, Peter?
I think that's a fantastic question. I'm going to start with a very broad context and then narrow it down to that specific. And the broad context I want to start in is, why is trust and reliability so vital for AI? AI has tremendous potential to change everything we do. But in order for it to do that, people need to feel comfortable adopting it. And we're all smart. We don't adopt things we don't trust. You don't give them your banking information. You don't give them your business information. You don't give them your medical information, or trust what they say or do about it if they're not reliable. And so the question becomes, how do we make AI reliable? Because if I had to point to anything that's holding back AI today, it's not capability, it's reliability, right? Is it correct? Is it secure? Is it safe all the time? And if we can make AI truly reliable, the potential for benefits to everyone around the world, and frankly, the potential for businesses and markets is fantastic. But the way that we drive that is with metrics, is with evaluations. AI is an incredibly complex black box system. So to make it better, you need to have common yardsticks that you use to measure progress. And we need those common yardsticks badly for all aspects of reliability. So you alluded to the work on security with IMDA. Natasha alluded to some of the work around multilingual safety that we're collaborating with Microsoft on, and with folks at Google as well. These are examples of what's necessary to drive that push towards reliability. But they're very technically hard. This is something that I don't think people appreciate enough. They see someone publish a paper. We made a benchmark for something, right? And they made a data set and they did it once. But there's a tremendous amount of technology to go to industrial quality benchmarking, which is what we need for industrial level reliability. There's work to take the experiments we're doing in multilingual benchmarking and turn those into a dependable framework that empowers people around the world to produce very high quality multilingual safety and security benchmarks, and then to maintain and evolve them over time, right? If ML Commons can help lift the resources there so that people can make the choices about language and culture where they have expertise without having to grapple with the really hard technical questions of how you do AI benchmarking, we hope that could be very empowering. An example from the healthcare space, we have a MedPerf project that uses what we call federated evaluation, where it sends models out to different facilities and then tests them on a small bit of data and accumulates the results. This is how you do healthcare benchmarking for reliability, for correctness, against very, very diverse data sets, potentially around the world. It's technology like that, like dependable industrial scale multilingual safety and security, or medical benchmarking made possible with data sets across disparate legal systems through technology like federated eval and confidential compute, that we believe really unlocks that future of high reliability systems.
That's excellent, thank you. And the repeated use of that term reliable, so what we need is reliable LLMs, but we need the reliable benchmarks, as you said.
Yes.
And I think this point about healthcare is really interesting, because what we need to do is, you mentioned industrial scale as well, we need this process that can be trusted. And that's one thing that I found working with ML Commons, how we all come together, the people from industry, many academics around the world. You just look at any of the papers released, so you can go to the website, and how many authors and how many
Yes.
years of expertise is donated to that effort. Where do you see, Peter, the next sort of big movements for ML Commons? Because these yardsticks will change. You've done healthcare. Where do you think is the important area for you in benchmarking in the near future?
I think thanks to the contributions from all of those experts, and I truly think it is a testament to the industry that we are getting very in-demand experts from some of the leading companies to contribute to this work. Like, people really care about doing AI right. That is unarguable if you look at, as you say, the author list. What we need to do is leverage that expertise to scale. It's not enough to do a benchmark and publish a paper. We need to make that benchmark available to the entire industry to drive that push towards reliability. We also need to scale in terms of technology. Right now, a lot of our benchmarks are prompt response. You ask a question, you look at the answer, you see whether it's safe or secure or correct. But the future, as everyone knows, is multi-turn and agentic. And so we need to drive wider and deeper at the same time. There is tremendous demand for what we do. It is tremendously resource intensive, and we are trying very hard to meet that demand as quickly as we can.
Thank you so much. You mentioned the work of Google, so I'm going to come to Dr. Iyer from the Gates Foundation in a moment, just talking about some of the conversations. So we were hoping to have Vint Cerf, who some of you may know. I know, Wendy, you know him very well.
But he doesn't travel so much these days.
No, yeah, he, that's the thing. He couldn't travel. He's got some issue that he couldn't. But he was very strong in supporting, and he introduced me to the chief researcher at Google and Google DeepMind, who's made quite a few comments. Sorry?
I know them too.
Yeah. made quite a few comments about, the opportunity here and for global development, and Africa in particular not being left behind. And earlier this week I was with Yoshua Benjo, who was talking about, if there's exponential opportunity with AI, if you are behind that by a number of months, then the distance between you and others is also growing exponentially, right? So it's really important, this democratization of AI. And as I mentioned earlier, I've had the pleasure of working in partnership with the Gates Foundation, and Dr. Harish Iyer is joining us today. He's the director, a director at the Gates Foundation, looking at health product research and development, digital innovation, and AI. And he plays a leading role in supporting innovation, science, and technology to improve public health and economic development. He's a strategic partner between Indian researchers, who are based over here in India, global partners, and Gates Foundation teams in areas including vaccine preventable diseases, disease surveillance, and modeling. So thank you for joining us today. We've heard a little bit, of course, India has really pushed forward with its digital public infrastructure. And we've heard in the last session, Dr. Garg was in from Sanjay Jain, your colleague, about MOSIP, which is modeled on Aadhaar in some ways and is an open source initiative. So what I'd like to ask you is, where countries lack foundational infrastructure, what role do organizations, philanthropic organizations like the Gates Foundation play in enabling access to trustworthy AI capabilities?
Thank you so much for inviting me. I think this is obviously a very complex question, not fully settled, I will say for sure. So I mean, most of my experience in this field is in India. So I think, first off, I'd like to start by saying it's great that India is hosting this summit. It's fantastic, and showcasing a lot of the work that the country has done, the capability, and the use cases that are, that we are very, closely supporting. I think the trustworthy question is very much, and I would say sustainability as well is another question that we have to think about, is about, what sort of models do we need to have? Are they large centralized models, or are they dispersed, decentralized models on the edge? Do we need, in countries with poor connectivity, so trustworthiness has got many aspects to it, right? Is it going to be ready to work when you want it to work, right? Suppose, again, my work, a lot of it is in health and agriculture and things like that. So if you're a frontline worker, how do you make sure that they can, if they have to make inferences, and primary care is something we're very focused on, can they make inferences if needed on the edge? If you're a health system person and you want to improve the working of a health system, making sure the right experts are in the right facility, the right medicines are there, patients are taken care of, there's a great opportunity to make this very high quality. But again, the question becomes, how do you access the compute? How quickly can inferences come? How easy it is to prompt? And there's all this, which is very, because if it doesn't work well, then you lose trust. It just doesn't work. The next level question is language. I think Dr. Garg talked about it, the whole Bhashani project in India, and there are similar projects that we've been involved in. And there's been a lot of debate even within the foundation as to which models can perform on language well, right? Which systems can interpret super complex. I think we heard from the other speakers about how complex this is. What works well? So trustworthiness will partly come from how systems respond and the lived experience in terms of simple things like, is it accessible? Is it the right language? Is it relevant? I mean, India is a continent on its own. Between different states, the health systems and approaches are often different based on local policies. How does it work in terms of policy in a particular state? One thing I'm particularly familiar with is pregnancy risk stratification. We talk a lot about how to reduce maternal mortality, infant mortality, stillbirth. The rules in Uttar Pradesh, for example, may be different from the rules in Telangana. How do you make sure that if you have a tool that supports frontline workers in understanding and improving identification of risk of pregnant mothers, how do you make sure that it works in that context? So this context is important. I think trust has all of these things built into it. I'll also talk a little bit about sustainability questions. Sustainability also requires these kinds of questions to be answered well. What's the energy consumption? Are there simpler, lower parameter, lower energy consuming models rather than the giant models? That's to me, it's like a core question. And I think it's nice to know that there are researchers in the country who are thinking about that. Beyond that, can hardware itself look different? Beyond digital, let's say. I saw this researchers recently looking at, multi-parameter, multi-state compute capabilities, and that was really fascinating. I just saw it 2 weeks ago because I was prepping for a bunch of meetings. Can those be great opportunities? Maybe they're further in the future to improve the likelihood of edge computing and edge inferences. So there's a lot of, and then I think finally open source. I think open source is going to be, in my mind, a critical aspect of it. We'll have to see how far open source movement takes track here. Because many governments in the global south may not be able to afford the large amounts of money that might be needed for a long period of time, right? How do you do these use cases well? So that I think is going to be another aspect of it that allows for adoption, trust at the highest levels. Again, I'm talking about the bottom 50% of the pyramid. Top 10% of the pyramid, they'll do what they have to do. But ultimately, to build trust, you need to get to the bottom 50% of the pyramid. And so there are different, in quotes, markets here, if you will, people who can pay at different levels. Even within a country like India, obviously there's multiple different levels. How can you make sure that this can reach everybody and don't create a divide, not just between global north and global south, but even within countries, We want to make sure that this doesn't create a divide, and that's, I think, another important part of building societal trust. The last point, which I think is also important, is what is the impact on society of this technology? I think this is going to be an important one as well. Are you able to create jobs, employment, and there's a meta question about how does it ultimately play out? Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we'll come back to some of those points in a minute, if I may, Harish. Because, as you may have seen, we've just been joined by Dame Professor Wendy Hall, someone I've...
Professor Dame, but don't mind.
Oh,
Carsten, you should know that. You're a Brit.
I'm not a dame.
But if you were a sir,
Yeah, I'm
it's
not
always
a sir
Professor
either.
Sir, yeah.
But if I keep being nice to you, maybe you'll put a word in for me. So I've known Wendy for a long time. She's Regius Professor of Computer Science and Associate Vice President International Engagement at the University of Southampton, where she's also Director of Web Science. There are so many accolades. She's been a Dame Commander since 2009 and is a Fellow of the Royal Society and the Royal Academy of Engineering and the ACM, and was President of lots of those organisations, including the British Computer Society, BCS, sorry. And most notably, she was the co-chair of the UK government's AI review and a member of the AI Council. We've talked also about skills, actually, Wendy. We were both on the, I think you were probably leading it, but I was just a member of it, the review with Nigel Shadbolt into computer science, if you remember.
No, he did that one. That was
him.
Professor
But you
Sir
were in it.
Nigel. No, I didn't. No, I
No?
wasn't. No,
Okay,
no.
okay. Anyway, you've been involved in advising many governments around the world.
Lord, you know.
Could you tell us a little bit about the UK's approach to developing sovereign AI capabilities?
No, I'm not going to answer that question because this is a trustworthy panel,
Yeah.
right? And I want to talk about trustworthiness.
Okay.
And that's why I was asking what the panel was about. Because Carsten, because I'm doing 3 panels this morning and I've got a lunch date to go to, so an important one. So I was asking Peter what the panel was about because it's about trustworthy AI, right?
Yeah.
So I want to say, if you don't mind, Carsten, I could tell you what the UK is doing. That's very parochial. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm very excited that this conference has been in India, but I have a love-hate relationship with it. It's been a really difficult conference to navigate. 250,000 people here, but you end up talking to rooms of, tens of people. Okay, it's out on YouTube. Does AI need this sort of jamboree? I don't know for the future, but it is fabulous to have the spotlight on India. I'm a member of my long thing. I'm a member of the MOSIP advisory board.
Of course you are, yeah.
Yeah, I've been involved. I'm in awe of what India's done with the Aadhaar and built the digital public infrastructure. And I want to see how that works. I would love to see how that works in the UK, but it doesn't translate. It works in developing countries. It's much harder to translate it to an old world that has long established rules and regs and ways of working. And anyway, so I'm really excited it's here. And it was fabulous also to see the young people here because in the UK, and I think it's probably true in most of Europe and US, people are really worried about AI. They're scared because that's what they get. They get scaremongering. They're scared it's going to attack them. They're scared it's going to wipe the world out. They're scared they're going to lose their job. Here, the kids are going, wow, what an opportunity, right? And for India, I mean, that's been an eye-opener for me. I mean, I've been working in India long enough to know. I helped introduce the web into India, right? Or in web and internet and the web science stuff of work I've done here. And I know what you can do with the power of that technology for people, that can't read and write and live in the rural areas. I mean, it's just amazing what it does. Add AI on top of that. Then when they're not worried about the deep fakes yet. What they want is to get the information to their, people in the fields, the farmers in the fields, in rural India. I suppose deep fakes might, I don't know, but that's not what they're worried about at the moment. So it has been fabulous. And I love the slogan, India here, in India, AI is all-inclusive, but it isn't. AI is missing out 50% of the population, right? This technology, and I've been fighting this sort of thing all my career, it's totally male-dominated. Totally male-dominated. And I'm very sorry, but the way we talk about women's safety, well, women aren't involved in these discussions, right? Children aren't involved in these discussions, but 50% of us are women, and we're not involved in the discussions about keeping us safe. Actually, we need to keep men safe too, right? Men suffer from deep fakes as much as women do. So, you know, well, maybe someone's not agreeing with that, but it could be disproportionately hitting women and children, but I don't want to exclude the men here. So I have become even more passionate. I talked about it in my keynote on Wednesday, not in the talk itself, but in the conversation, that it's so important that this is really all-inclusive and that women are involved at the top level in the decision-making about what we do. Take, for example, the Australian experiment to stop the kids under 16 using social media. Now, that is an experiment. Everything about this world is a global experiment, and people are doing different bits of it. The web was like that, right? The web itself, from the genius that is Tim Berners-Lee, was a worldwide experiment. There are many different ways that you could have built a hypermedia network on top of the internet, and boy, I tried to do one myself, and it was better than the web. But what Tim did was give it away, make fantastic, make it open, and actually that led to the rise of the use of it. But it's also left us with the stuff we've got today, because anyone can do anything on the web. So bad people can do bad things, and bad things happen unintentionally. The unintended consequences, what I called my talk on Wednesday. So this ban on social media, we've got to be able to study the effects. Now, I know the Australians are. We heard Macron say here in France it's going to be under 15. Keir Starmer's saying under 16, but he changed his mind on a penny, so that it'll probably change. But that's a joke for the Brits. But I think Spain has said under 16. The US, of course, Trump says no, we won't need to worry about safety. But I made this joke in the other panel. He's the man that drank bleach during COVID. So, but the point is, we have to study, people say, "Oh, it's all moving so fast." The alpha males say that, right? The alpha males say it's all moving so fast, and I'm bigger, better, faster, and cheaper than you are, right? All that sort of alpha male stuff. We have to think about how we actually measure the effects of what we're doing. So, two good things that have come out of the UK. This is my last point, all right? This last month, the National Physical Laboratory, I'm their AI advisor, but that's beside the point. It's like the UK equivalent of NIST. They do our metrology. It's a word I've learnt to say very well. Metrology, they do weather forecasting is metrology, studying the weather. If we can do that, we can do flipping AI. So, because that's complicated. The thing about AI is, of course, it's got people in it, not just physical objects doing things, systems. So it's harder in that sense. But the National Physical Laboratory announced 2 weeks ago, backed by the UK government, the Centre for AI Measurement. And the UK AI Security Institute, which was founded by Rishi Sunak at Bletchley Park, is part of the network of security institutes. And the US, this is the man again who drank bleach during COVID, says no regulation. So we can't talk about the network being a network of safety institutes. Why would we want to be safe? Sorry, joke. But what they've renamed it, the Network for AI Measurement and Evaluation. Now this is brilliant. So with my ACM hat on and everything else I can do in the dying embers of my career, no, it's not dying yet, but is to start a science of AI that's about AI metrology. But what we're doing, of course, is we are measuring the effects of social machines, which is difficult. You have to, the social scientists have taught me how you have to gather the evidence, we can do it. We don't have this. There is time to do this. The world is not going to end at the end of this year because of AI. Other things, yes, but not because of AI. So that's where I want to leave you the thought. I think if we can develop this new science, put all our, the compute power, the best brains from social science and computer science and psychology and all the other disciplines we need, the law, everything, we can really start to think about how we measure trust. And one of the metrics in AI metrology will be the trust factor. I leave it there.
Thank you very much.
A round of applause, please. Thank you. And I'm ever so sorry. You can ask me what I've got to go in 2 minutes.
I'll ask you one thing very briefly then. Open data you've been a proponent of, right?
With Tim,
yeah.
Tim and Nigel, yeah.
Yeah. So I just wondered, openness, collaboration is important. We've talked about open source. What role do you think open data has in trustworthiness of?
Well, there's two things about that. The open data movement's been really important, but not all data can be open, right? It can't be.
Yep.
And you can have data that is exchangeable, shareable, that won't necessarily be open. So another thing I'm on is the UN. It's the CSTD, that's Commission for Science Technology in the UN, Data Governance Working Group. And I could tell you in much more detail about that. For me, data governance is, we ignore that. When we talk about AI governance, we ignore data governance at our peril, and we've really got to build on that. From the UN report we did, the General Assembly accepted all the points we recommended. They're being implemented. That's the other panel I should have been on today. There's a UN panel. And they accepted everything that we recommended, the Global Scientific Panel, the Global Dialogue, the Global Fund, and the Secretary-General yesterday asked for $3 billion. That's not very much, for a global fund to develop AI in the Global South. But our recommendations on data governance were not accepted because the countries would not vote for them because it's so difficult, it's so complicated. And so that's another thing I'm working hard on, is how can we actually get some, how do we do cross-border data sharing? How do we get the data flows so we can actually share data sets? And another thing we need to do, which is something I want to do, is build a data, tell people where the data is. Yep. We need data repositories, or at least registries around the world, so researchers know where the data is, so they can do this study. I'll leave you with that. That's something else that's on my agenda.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I'm going to... Yes, thank you. Thanks so much. I'm going to go to each of the panelists for just 30 seconds. I'll start with Dr. Garg, then Harish, then Natasha, and then Peter, just to make us dizzy. Just one comment for the audience about how we really push this democratizing AI and trustworthiness.
I think one issue which I mentioned in the earlier panel is that we perhaps need to give a lot more attention to the models because that will also help. More efficient models will help reduce the requirement for compute and energy, which is among the biggest costs presently. And having models which are more domain specific would also enable better usage of those models and widen diffusion across people.
Thank you so much. Harish.
Yeah. Just very quickly, I think real world evidence is going to be very important in terms of, is it actually useful? I think we all assume it's useful, but I'm talking about social and the development sector. I can imagine so many ways it is useful, but it'd be good to make sure we build evidence on how it can be trusted and, of course, be useful, metricize this a bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. Natasha.
Well, I think one of the points that's come out clearly in this discussion is that trustworthy AI diffusion is not going to just happen by itself. We have to make choices that lead to that outcome. And so for that reason, I am excited about these attempts at measurement in multiple dimensions. Measurement of the systems, but also measurement in the changes of our economy so that we can then start to see whether the interventions that we're putting in place are actually having the desired effect, because we get to write this future, but we have to actively guide it, and I think data in multiple dimensions is really key to that.
Thank you. And the final word on measurement should go to Peter. So, Peter.
I'm going to echo the obvious point, which is that measurement is tremendously important. And then the hidden point, which is the scope of measurement is vast. And so we need to get really good at it, both in terms of quality and the efficiency, the cost efficiency with which we can implement it and with which we can evolve it.
Thank you. Could you please give a round of applause to an excellent panel? Thank you so much from me. Thank you.
Hello, 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 hello,